Well, welcome everybody. My name is Bob Bartlett, and I'm with the Ubuntu Fly Anglers Network, and your host of our series called On the Reel. My preferred pronouns are he, him. I live here in eastern Washington on the ancestral lands of the Spokane Confederated Tribes. In case you don't know about Ubuntu, we are a group of black and brown fly anglers and environmental activists from across the U.S. and Canada. Part of our mission, a main part of our mission, is to make visible people like us who are basically invisible in the fly fishing industry. So, one of our major missions is to make visible the invisible of us black and brown fly anglers, environmental activists, hobby anglers, professional anglers all over the country. So, I'm really excited today to have as our guest. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to resort to notes today, which I don't normally do, but this person is so special I don't want to miss anything. So, today's guest is a native of North Carolina, longtime fly angler, fly fishing educator, casting instructor, and a doer of many things. Our guest today is Joyce Shepherd. But before we start, I need to say one more thing about Joyce. So, just so happens, I, um, I learned this from Joyce, and she mentioned it so sleight of hand that I thought, wait a minute, I need to do some checking on this. And so I went back and did, because she's a very humble person. So I just wanted to say before we get started here, congratulations, Joyce, on your 2018 induction into the Fly Fishing Museum of the Southern Appalachians Hall of Fame. You were honored in the Humanity category for your long-standing contribution to fly fishing and dedication to helping others recover from personal challenges through fly fishing. I wanted to read that to get it right. So, Joyce, that's absolutely amazing, and congratulations to you for that accomplishment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to be sure to get that out. So, thanks for being on the show, Joyce. I'm really anxious to get going. So, tell us about yourself. Where are you and your people from? Let's start there.
My people are from a little place called Snow Hill, North Carolina.
Whew.
Um, we were tobacco farmers, tobacco, cotton, and corn mostly. I got the opportunity to ride a mule when I was younger and all.
Ride a mule.
Yeah, I've ridden mules. I've driven tractors. Yeah, I was a country girl.
All right. So, but where do you live now, Joyce?
I live in Lake Wiley, South Carolina.
Uh,
It's a little place right basically across the bridge from Charlotte,
oh,
and so it's pretty close to Charlotte. You know, I could walk there if I felt the urge. Um, but it's a pretty peaceful town,
uh-huh. Mhm.
so I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned last night we had a chance to visit a little bit. You mentioned that you're actually on a lake.
I can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay. You mentioned last night that you're actually on a lake. Is that right?
I am. I actually live on Lake Wiley.
Right. And that's a freshwater lake, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just trying to get you located here. And so you're near Charlotte.
Hmm.
That would be your
Yes.
big city. Okay. All right.
Yes.
So so Joyce, when did you start this fishing thing? From the very beginning. Where did you start, and who got you into this fishing?
Well, I started fishing in when I was 35. So
Wow.
basically half my life, I guess. I think about it. Yeah, a friend of mine came over to me and he said, "I want to learn how to fish." I said, "Well, so do I." So we started hanging out on bridges, and I used to live in Washington, D.C. I lived there most of my life. And there's a place on the Chesapeake Bay called Chop Tank, and it's half a bridge, and a lot of people go out there to fish.
Hold on a second. You said half a bridge. It's
Yes,
half of a bridge.
half of a bridge. Yes.
Where does it stop?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I, I,
it's
I'm,
not. It doesn't go all the way across the bay.
that's what
You
I'm.
know, it's not that
That's
far.
that's what I'm concerned about. So basically it's a bridge to nowhere. Is that what you?
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Except in the middle of. Okay, I'm sorry.
It just sits there, man. A lot of people fish there.
Okay,
So while we were there, the people were kind enough to show us how to do it because neither one of us had ever fished.
so this
So
is you're fishing with bait then, right?
we were fishing with bait.
Okay,
Hmm.
okay, all right. And how did that go?
It went pretty well. We got the bug to start fishing, and then we started fishing charters off of on the Chesapeake Bay and out of Pennsylvania, and uh, we I used to do when I come back to work the next day, and I start talking about fishing and what a great time I had and how many fish I caught, and a lot of the ladies would walk over to me and say that they wanted to fish,
Mm-hmm.
but their boyfriends or their husbands would get mad at them because they had to bait their hook and take the fish off their hook and all that. So I started having fishing trips for women, um, so that I could teach them how to bait their own hook and take their own fish off. That way they could go out and have fun and without being angry once they got home.
So you got this group of women together. Did it was it a formal group
Yeah.
or it was just
No,
let's
just
just get together and go to the
yeah, I would just put out an email. I said, look, I'm going fishing this weekend. Do y'all want to come? This is how much it will cost for the charter, and then we'd go.
wow. And what species were you catching at that point?
Oh, we had striped bass.
Uh,
Um, Sometimes we had a moratorium on them because I guess they were taking too many of them out of the bay.
mm,
But we had striped bass, croaker, spots, um, perch. So
mm.
it was a good variety.
Yeah, and you were so this these charters you went on it would have or were they trolling rigs? Did they have them off the back of the boat and they would just drive around, or would you anchor and fish?
Most of the time it was we had sometimes we did a big charter, the 40 person
Oh
charters,
my!
and sometimes we just have about 6 or 7 people, and and most of the time it was the smaller version,
Mm,
especially if I was doing the one with the ladies because if I was going to teach them something I wouldn't be able to do it on a big huge ship.
sure, sure. What's always fascinating to me how any one of us gets into this what for many of us becomes an obsession. This fishing, and then how any of us evolve from the staring at a red and white bobber with a worm underneath to fly fishing. It's
Hmm.
interesting how each of us have our own story of how that all started and when it started. And I know you and I talked before that you've been fly fishing, Joyce, longer than any. I have to. I'm going to check it. Besides myself, so I've been doing it 60 years. You've been doing it at least half that long. Let me just
Yeah.
say. Let me just say, we're in rare air. You've been as a black woman fly angler. You've been doing it longer than any, actually, white or black female I know. So let's go from take us from fishing off the half bridge, fishing from a charter, to how did fly fishing come about?
Well, I was coming back one day from one of our women only fishing trips, and uh, I didn't feel like going home. Basically, every once in a while you just don't
Yeah,
feel like
it
it.
just don't feel like that's right.
I just didn't feel like going home.
Uh,
And I looked up, and there was a marina excuse me, an arena in Maryland, and it said fly fishing show. Now, basically, all I saw was fishing. So I said, well, I'll just go in here for a little while, delay going home. So I
yeah.
walked in, and as I walked in, Lefty Kreh was giving a demonstration, and I saw, that whoosh, I loved it. And I didn't understand what it was or anything about it, but I was standing near uh, a guide. His name Mark Kovach, and he saw me look very puzzled. So I just sat next to him, and he explained everything that was going on, and he explained to me about the show and about the flies, and you know and naturally, of course, I booked a trip with him. But it was that was my introduction to fly fishing. I like the fact that you had to think about everything you did. You had to think about whether if the water is cold enough, if you for the species, you had to think about whether or not the how deep it was, which way the current was flowing, whether you were going to fish on the bottom, in the middle, or on the top, or and you had to think about the bugs that were on the water. You had to think about every little thing. And I like the fact that you had to think about stuff instead of just putting the worm on the hook and dropping it in the water.
There's something to that for sure. Um,
Yeah.
well, it's interesting that being at my age and stage, um, I talk about people like everyone is familiar with them in fly fishing. And you mentioned the name Lefty Craig. Well, um,
Mhm.
a lot of people don't know. They're of a different generation, but
True.
but Lefty Craig is also in the Hall of Fame, in different
Yeah.
Hall of Fames.
He's
For
he's in the one in New York. Mhm.
right, he's in the big house, so to speak. But
Mhm.
but that's okay. But Lefty Craig was an amazing caster,
Yes.
casting instructor, fly angler. He brought a lot of people to the industry, to the sport.
He
Excuse me.
did.
And
He liked to tease me a lot
uh,
when I'd go to the show. Needless to say, I was the only black person there most of the time. And I'd stand there and I'd watch him do his casting thing. You know how he likes to twist
right.
when he cast, and he would just, as I stand there, he'd always just say, "Come here." He did it to me every single time, every place we went, and I couldn't do it. I still can't. Um,
Yeah.
so I've learned how to do it from Joan Wulff, and I think I'll just stay there. I'll just do it that way.
Okay. Again, you mentioned
Mhm.
a name that is not familiar to the current generation of,
Mhm.
fly anglers. Um, but I want to go back real quick to Lefty Craig. Lefty had
Mhm.
a very, yeah, had a very unique casting style and something that was
Mhm.
very, very hard to replicate. And
Absolutely.
you can tell when you've been around a while the sport who's been mentored and trained under him
Yes.
because they cast the same. And and what we're talking about here is his cast is more horizontal. Most of us learn to keep the rod high and stop, 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 and Lefty Craig fell off to the side, and
Yep.
he would
Did that.
cast this way. So when you see someone today, even some of the pros that are out there casting, if they're casting with a low rod, like I'll bet you were mentored by Lefty Craig. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. I had a chance to meet him as well and watch him do some casting demonstrations back in Colorado. And he was absolutely phenomenal and quite the character, fun to be
Hmm.
around. Um, so Lefty Craig was Yeah, it's interesting. He was both in your life and my life for a short while. Now you dropped another bomb. You mentioned the name
Mhm.
Joan Wulff. Tell us about Joan Wulff. Your experience with Joan Wulff.
Well, that's kind of a little bit of a long story, but I was I went to a meeting of international women fly fishers, which is where I met her the first time. And the purpose of the international women fly fishers were they were trying to gather all of the uh, women uh, fly fishing clubs in the United States. Well, we had United States, we had some people in Japan, we had some people, so it was definitely international. And so we were just trying to get everybody together. And I found out about Chesapeake Women Anglers, which was um, near DC. So I managed to hook up with them. But I had gone to the fly fishing show that I went to. There was a young lady there who wanted to introduce me to a place called a camp called River Course. Um, in It's a TU camp, and she just wanted me to chaperone. But once I got to River Course, I started discovering my love for teaching and teaching the kids. And I wanted to make sure that I was teaching them properly. So what I did was sign up for Joan Wulff's course because she has a teaching course, not just a casting course. So I went up to New York to take her course. It's a 3 day course. I think it's three. It's been a long time. I believe it's three. Um, so I was up there with her, and so she taught me that I have a tendency to drift, which is not good.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had to learn not to do that.
Uh-huh. Now, what? Excuse me here. I don't mean to cut you off, but what year was this? You
I didn't hear you.
about what year was this?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean,
I
decade
do not
must have been.
remember
Was it?
it.
It would be likely.
I think it was in the 90s, but
Okay.
exactly which year I don't remember.
No, no, no. Just roundabout. Just trying to get a year here, a decade.
Yeah.
So again, Joan Wulff,
Hmm.
the biggest names in fly angling historically. You just mentioned
Hmm.
um, Joan Wulff, the first lady of fly casting, fly fishing. I think is more appropriate. Joan Joan Wulff, her husband Lee Wulff, um,
Hmm.
were amazing and really helped this fly fishing go. Um, and we're all over the world. I'm just truly envious that you had. I'd love to be able to hang out with Joan Wulff for a minute, let alone 3 days. That's really that's
Well,
that's pretty special.
she's still there. She's still there, and she's still teaching because some of the ladies from Women on the Fly down here um, went and took her class earlier this year. So she's still teaching. She's 95, I believe.
Wow, yeah, that would make sense because he was born around 1920 something. So uh, yeah, she's amazing, and to watch the old videos of her, because she was the one and only woman at the time competing in fly casting tournaments all over and just spanking everybody,
That's
just
right. She's just
flat
winning everything.
spanking everybody. All these guys out there with their, ready to chuck it, and here comes this
Hmm.
woman in heels and a dress, looked like a
I
ballroom
know.
dress, and a fly rod. But of course, you got to do a little bit of history on Joan Wulff to really get a sense of where she came from. She came from a background of fly
And she was a
fishing.
dancer. She was a ballet dancer.
That and her father owned a sporting goods store, and got her out with a fly rod when she was very, very little. So, but anyway, that's amazing. That we could talk about, these folks all day. At least I can, and I know you can. But then you had the Chesapeake Bay experience with the women, and you got a chance to hang out with Joan Wulff, so you honed your skills. And then what happened?
Well, I started working with when I moved down here. I moved to Charlotte in 2000 in the year 2001. Uh,
Excuse me.
yes, I couldn't find a job after 9/11, so I came down here. My daughter was down here, so she said, "Come on down, Mom." So I did. Um, but I started going to the TU chapters, Rocky River TU, and they were asking me. Some of the people were asking me whether or not I wanted to do the chaperone thing at River Course. River Course is a spectacular camp. It's a spectacular camp, and it goes from Sunday to Friday. And I um, once I started learning how to actually teach, because Joan Wulff will teach you. She'll teach you how to touch people. She'll teach you how not to touch people. Uh, which has helped me a lot with the working with the veterans of Project Healing Waters, because she doesn't. I don't like the. I like the fact that she taught me how not to hurt people.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
some people have a tendency to bend their wrist too much, and that hurts them. And you can talk to people. You can touch them on their shoulder. You can ask, "Can I touch you here? Can I touch you there?" So she taught me how to do a lot of that. And
Wow.
but I started doing river course. Um, so river course is a spectacular camp. We um, we plant trees, because down here we have what they call a riparian buffer. I don't know if you have the same thing up there, but because of so many fisher fisher folk down here, some people just wear the rivers down. So we plant the trees to teach kids about that, and about the clean water, and things like that. So I'm lost. Where was I?
You just talking about the river course, which sounds like a
Oh,
lot of fun to me.
River Course is a spectacular
Yeah,
camp. It
and
really
and
is.
that's all through TU. Is that right?
I'm sorry.
That's all through TU.
Yes,
Trout
yes,
Unlimited again, for those who.
yeah. Trout
Okay.
Unlimited. Yes.
Well, let's talk a minute here about your actual your fishing experience. Now I know we've had the conversation before that you see yourself really as an educator, but I also know that you've spent time uh, chasing fish with a fly rod yourself. Where
Yeah.
what do you consider your home waters? Uh,
Um,
that,
the closest one here is South Mountains State Park. It's only
okay,
about maybe 35, 40 minutes away.
okay.
To me, I like the Nantahala River. That's up in Bryson City. That's about 4 hours away. And the Tuckasegee River, uh, and those are absolutely beautiful, beautiful places.
Mm,
Um, I like to I like to float. One of my favorite things is floating.
mm,
Um, and I like to float for smallmouth mostly, and that's usually around here is the New River or the James River.
So the other rivers that you talked about, those were trout rivers.
Yes,
The mountain. Okay. Okay.
the
That,
mountain
that
rivers. Yes. Hmm.
Now I know you mentioned you like to float. Now, folks
Hmm.
will be able to see you in a kayak, and
Yeah, yeah.
because you sent that picture to me of you in a kayak, and you did not look like you were having fun at all. Um,
Well,
what
that
happened there?
picture that picture was taken when I had my fly rod up and I was hung in a tree. Um, so I was trying to get my fly rod out of the tree, and I did that rollover thing that kayaks do.
Uh,
Yeah, which is no fun when you can't swim. So we were on the New River. Fortunately, it was low enough that I could actually stand on the bottom as I stood there screaming help.
did you
From
lose
a
your fly
storm.
rod? Did you lose your fly rod? That's
I did not.
okay.
I did not. I had my. The fact is, when the guys and when they heard me yelling, they came back and helped me hook unhook myself. There was actually a fish on the line.
Oh,
So,
oh, I knew there was a story behind that picture because you did not look like you were having much fun in that particular
uh,
snapshot.
yeah.
Uh, so what is your
Well,
what's that?
when you can't swim and you're
Yeah,
on a river,
yeah, yeah.
it's that kind of a daunting idea, But yeah, I thought I'd try it. What the heck? So,
Yeah, I've been around one other person like you that came last October here to Spokane, and we fished together, and she did not want to get in the boat at all. And she said, "Could I wear 3 life jackets?" I said, "Well, you won't be able to move. You'll be like the Pillsbury thing or the Michelin man." But
mhm.
I have to say, once we got her in the boat and got her settled, and she started catching fish, everything changed. And she was
Yeah,
way more comfortable.
that
Uh,
all that always helps.
that always helps to start catching when you
Hmm.
catch fish. What's your favorite species to catch, and what's your preferred method of fishing? We all have our go-to, right?
Well, I like to. My favorite species is trout. Well,
Okay.
I, I don't know. Okay, I like to fish trout, and I like to fish bass, smallmouth usually.
Uh-huh.
Um, but most of the time that's when I'm floating for the smallmouth. But I'll sit on a rock and just drift. Just just let the line drift and flip it back and just do that. I'll do that for an hour and uh, and be just as happy and content. Um, but yeah, I do like that. I like catching bass because they're kind of feisty. You know,
Sure, sure.
I've never caught a carp. Well, maybe one day. I've never caught one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, mostly trout.
Yeah. So are you a streamer, nympher, what,
I like to
dry
nymph.
fly?
I like to nymph and I like to do dry flies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do. The closest thing that I do, like the big bugs you like to throw, are woolly buggers.
Sure. Now when she's talking
Yeah.
about big, but she's not talking about for those dry fly people out there. No, I don't throw dry flies. No, Joyce knows
Yeah.
me well enough to know that when she says big bugs to me, we're talking streamers, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
she likes to throw. Well, that's great smallmouth food, right? If you're trout fishing and nymphing, uh, or as the newer generation knows it as Euro nymphing, which back when you and I were doing it, it was called high sticking, and
Yeah.
caught a ton of fish that way. But now you have to
So
have
they they actually call it. They can actually call it that. They call it Euro
it's
nymphing.
called
Just.
Euro nymphing because there's a whole industry now that's producing special lines, special rods, special
Mhm.
everything, and
Okay.
the rods are longer. They have softer tips. The lines are designed so that you can detect strikes easier, so you're not fishing with an indicator. Um, so they've turned it into something really really unique. It's very old. It's a very old technique. But again,
Hmm.
when you and I started 30 and plus years ago, it was called high sticking. Just trying to get your
Right.
line as vertical as possible and get as natural
Hmm.
drift as possible with a long leader and something crazy tied on the end, very small. And it works. It works. So whether you're Euro, call it Euro nymphing and you're doing it, or high sticking, it doesn't matter as long as you're fishing and you're having a good time, right? But we all have our favorite species we like to chase, and that's usually based on experience or how we started fishing. And we all have our particular methods, and they all are fine as long as we're out there doing it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite story about involving fishing that
Well, my
experience?
favorite story was my favorite story it has to do with River Course once again with the
Okay.
kids.
Yeah.
Um, the day before we leave for from River Course, we do a little switcheroo on the kids. So the kids have to we call them gillies, which is a guide. We They have to guide us. They have to guide
Oh,
our
the adults.
folks like me.
Okay.
And we had I had two little girls that were supposed to be guiding me, and they had to do everything. They had to help me with my line. And naturally, of course, I had to throw a line up in a tree so they could get it down.
Sure.
You know, because they do that to us all the time. So we had to do it to them. Um, and we had once we got everything strung up, and they tied my fly on for me. They did everything like a guide would do.
Sure.
So they had to show us what they learned all that week.
Of course.
And once we got on the river, um, one of the young ladies was asking me whether or not I thought I could cast to a certain pool, and they were showing me how to drift. And they said, as soon as you get right around that rock, right there, you see that rock? And I said, yes, I see the rock. She said, well, as soon as it gets there, I want you to set the hook. And I said, okay. So I just drifted it down, and as soon as it went around that rock, boom, I hit the fish was on. That is one of my most favorite stories
Wow.
because the little girls they told me exactly what to do and exactly where to hook, how to hook, and they told me everything. So they learned how to do everything that we taught them how to do that week. So that's one of my favorite stories.
Wow. Do you know where these little girls are now? Do you know if they stuck with it? And please tell me they're river guides somewhere. They're fly fishing guides somewhere.
Well, there is I know, I don't know. There are two young ladies that I thought were gonna be gonna be guides, and I know one of them. Her name is Mary Kate. Um, I know she works in the fly shop. I know she guides. A lot of the When I work with casting Carolinas, we teach ladies with different types of cancers how to fly fish. Um, on that Sunday that we leave, we're there on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On that Sunday, we have guides come in from different fly shops, and a whole lot of the kids that come to help are uh, river
Oh.
course graduates.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the guys anyway, a lot of the guys actually guide for a lot of the fly shops now, and they come back to help on that Sunday, which is always wonderful to see.
Sure. Sure. That's awesome. That's why we love the being in education, because
Hmm.
we want to be sure that we're replaced someday by good people that know what they're doing, right?
Hmm.
Um, that is great. I wanna. That's an amazing story too. I love the image of you letting it drift by the rock, and I'm sure
I know it was so cool. It
I'm
was
sure
so
your
cool.
gilly was like, "Oh my gosh, it worked!
Yeah,
There was a
it was
fish
so
there."
cool.
Um, so I just want to make sure we've touched on some things here, because like I said, your story is amazing, and the work you've been doing is absolutely amazing. So let's see. You talked about your experience with International Women's on the Fly, or International Women's Fly Fishers, the Chesapeake Women Anglers. You talked about that a
Hmm.
little bit. You also co-founded the Women on the Fly,
Hmm.
right? Is that
Yes,
the in Charlotte area where you live, or was that in
yeah,
another?
in Denver. Yes,
Okay,
it in Denver, North Carolina.
Denver, North Carolina. Okay, is that
Right.
organization
Mhm.
still going? Do you know?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We've got over 200 ladies
Really?
signed up. Yeah, yeah. And
Wow,
most of the time, if we have
wow.
outings, we have, I don't know, usually 15, 20 ladies show up,
Um,
and occasionally some black ladies.
occasionally. Well,
Occasionally,
we're gonna get that. Well, I'm not gonna let that pass. I want to revisit what you just said. And then you were a member of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation Board of
I was on the
Directors.
board. Yes.
What was that
Well,
like?
I decided to get on the, well, I was asked, but I decided to get on the board because um, usually the places that are most polluted are our neighborhoods,
And what? I'm sorry. You
and
said our neighborhoods.
our
You
neighborhoods,
mean
yes,
like black folks' neighborhoods? Is that what
yes,
you? Okay. All right. Just
yes.
sure.
That's
All right.
usually
All right.
where they put the worst,
Sure.
the most polluted area.
Right.
It's,
Correct.
they have potash and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature.
Right.
We did a lot with cleaning up the potash uh, here in Charlotte, and that was in one of our neighborhoods. Um, they also do um, hunters for the hungry. So when a lot of people do deer hunting around here,
Mm-hmm.
but we have stations. I think about 10 stations between Charlotte and Raleigh, I believe. Um, and they would take the deer to the stations, and they would clean it up and ground it up and send it to homeless shelters.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you got on the board because you saw a need.
I yes, I wanted to know more
Sure.
about where things were thrown away,
Right.
if you will,
Sure.
and that's when I already knew that our neighborhoods were the ones that always got the bad end of the stick when it came down to pollution.
Yes, I would love to get more young people, especially involved in those sorts of activities as well. You know, I just left being on the board of the Spokane River Keeper after 4 or 5 years, and I spent a lot of time on the water, a lot of time doing different things. But it wasn't until I really got involved with that group of people did I begin to see the river and the environment differently. And I think
Hmm.
one of the cool things I hope we're able to do someday is to bring young people into that experience, so that they have a lot more years of it, you know, and they grow up doing it naturally, right? Being good stewards of the land and the water. Um, Joyce, I want you to touch on this because this is very very important, and then we'll be close to wrapping up here. Um, what has been your, and I have to read because I wrote it about 2 o'clock in the morning. What has been your biggest takeaway from your vast experience as a black woman fly angler, educator, and board member? Is there one takeaway from your experience being the only, you've described it before to me, the experience of being the only one like you at these events, involved in this work early on? So, do you have a particular takeaway that you'd like to share?
Well, my only takeaway is that we don't have enough. We don't have enough people who are into the environment, which we really need that. Um, and as far as me actually being out on the water, uh, I had because I came down here from DC. It was and that was kind of funny when I came down looking for Rocky River Trout Unlimited, and they used to meet in Longhorn Steakhouse, and I talked to the president, by email before I came down and to find out exactly where they were and all. And so as soon as I got down here and I was going to the meeting, and I just kind of stood in the doorway for a minute, and the whole room went quiet. I just loved it. I was just sitting there watching, looking at them, and they were looking at me, trying to figure out who I was. Um, but the young man who was the president at the time, he says, "You must be Joyce." So I certainly am. So, but they were always the 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 fishermen were always great to me,
Mm,
and at times they protected me.
mm,
Not Fortunately, that didn't have to happen very often. But somebody would walk back to me, and they, as I'm putting my waders and stuff on, and they say things like, "Oh, we let these rednecks go on down the river a little bit, and then we get back on the water." you know. So they did protect me, and they were very good to me. Um, I've met some spectacular people. Um, I've met Joe Humphreys. I've met um, ah, that's terrible. Name just went out of my head just that quick. That's terrible. Um, but I've met some extremely, extremely wonderful people doing this, and no one has ever treated me poorly.
mm.
No one has ever decided to sit around and tell a bunch of black jokes.
Yeah.
Um, and we did sit around and tell a lot of jokes. um, and it's been an experience to me, and I have met some extremely, extremely fascinating people. Um,
That's awesome.
Clouser, that's who I was trying to think
Oh,
of.
okay. There you go.
Yeah, because I saw him, I would see him at the fly fishing shows, and I didn't know if he was paying that much attention to me at all. And I came in one day, and I just stood there and was looking at him for a second, and he said, "Girl, come over here and get my hug my neck. What you standing there for?" You know. So, so they're I've had absolutely wonderful, nothing but wonderful um, adventures with these guys. I belong to the Psycho Fly Fishers, the Psycho Fly Fishing Club. So
Psycho.
Psycho Fly Fishing Club. Yeah, they're
Okay.
they're a lot of fun.
Oh. Um,
Yeah.
well, it sounds like you've within that within your answer just now, you touched on this, but what in the industry? I just have to put it out there this way. What in the industry, this obsession called fly angling, would you like to see change? You
Oh,
kind of
I just
touched.
like to see more of us.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to see more of us, and not just fishing, but being engaged with the environment, and being engaged in politics to clean up the environment. Uh, that's the main thing I would like.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really, I'm just so grateful that you responded to a picture uh, that was posted of the Ubuntu gathering here in Spokane,
Hmm.
and that we connected through that. Um,
Hmm.
I remember sending you a message, and you got back to me right away, and that started it. And you and I've also talked about how much we all see this, we being black and brown folks in this industry, see a real need for more representation. That we are out
Hmm.
there, we are out there doing it.
Yeah,
We're just
we're
scattered,
just scattered. Exactly.
yeah, from one end to the other. And it's been amazing this past year to focus on finding people like us, and finding you is just truly, it's been a blessing. Um, so, do you have any final thoughts here as we close out this episode? Anything that I didn't ask you, or that you really feel that people should know about Joyce Shepherd before we end the show?
No.
Well, I know we didn't cover everything, but well, I'm sure we're going to do something else, because I'd really like for you to, and another one of our members, to do an educational program, a virtual education program, because you have so much wisdom and so much experience wrapped up in you, which, by the way, is why we call this show On the Real. And I mentioned someone asked me the other day, well, it's REAL, right? Because I'd
Mhm.
like I like the opportunity to get real with the guests. But the other thing is a real. I mentioned that to someone, maybe it was you, that I think our bodies, our lived experience, our who we are, we're like a reel, the other reel, REEL, in that we're designed to hold line. Reels are designed to hold line. That's all they do. You can spend
Mhm.
$1,000 or you can spend $50, and you get this thing that just meant to hold line. And I think of us as that way. We hold in us a lot of stories, of lived experience, and we need to find ways to tap that and see the absolute wealth in storytelling and sharing of experiences. So I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I just thought I'd
Mhm.
say that. So everybody, listen, a huge, huge amount of thanks to Joyce Shepherd for agreeing to be on this episode of On the Real. I want to thank all of you for listening or for watching. Will this show will be up on YouTube. You'll also be able to read more about Joyce's story and see a picture of her actually in a kayak with that frightened look on her face, because she's trying not to drown. Um, but but I appreciate you all, and I hope you follow us on our Facebook at ubuntuflyinglers.com. You can email me directly at ubuntuflyinglers@gmail.com, and I promise to get back to you. Send in any questions or comments. Just let me know that you're out there, particularly if you're a black and brown fly angler, environmental activist. We want to know you. We want to get to know you. So, I am your host, Bob Bartlett, and this has been an episode of On the Real. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.